This week, it's time for security money. CrowdStrike crashes the index as Thoma Bravo keeps buying index companies. In the leadership and communications segment, the cybersecurity leadership crisis dooming America's companies. Judge rejects SEC's aggressive approach to cybersecurity enforcement. Is it time to pivot your strategy and more? Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important for enterprise companies worldwide, cyber risk management. Traditionally, cyber risk has been managed manually in silos, separate from the business's core operations. The future is about getting real-time risk insights benchmarked against your industry peers through automation. And CyberSaint's CyberStrong platform is leading the charge. CyberStrong is not just another point solution. It's a revolutionary platform. It's a quantified top-down risk approach where your unique cyber risks inform C-suite decision-making to identify your top 5 cyber risks and the controls to mitigate them. Sign up for your free cyber risk analysis by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersaint. Your customers' and employees' identities are your responsibility to keep safe. But who is helping you stay safe from identity-based threats? Identity is the key to getting security right. And with the right identity partner, so much more is possible for your business than you thought. From strengthening cybersecurity to increasing revenue to reducing inefficiencies and costs, Okta unlocks growth and new possibilities for its customers. Go to securityweekly.com/Okta to learn more about Okta and the company's commitment to leading the fight against identity attacks. Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Get more information at securityweekly.com/Panoptica. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 360, recorded August 12th, 2024. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me are my regular co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
How we doing, Matt? Listen,
How those Patriots looking,
Patriots
buddy?
won a preseason game, so we're starting off well. It's good to be watching football again, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't get into preseason much, Jason, because I just can't wait for the regular season. It's just it kind of annoys me. And
yeah,
anyways.
see, I like it. It's where you get to kick the tires on some of the new faces, right?
That's true. That's true. Also joining Mr. Ben Carr. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Matt. How's it going? Just excited to be back here at home after a long week at Black Hat last week.
How was it? I did not go. I decided not to go. How was it?
Good. There seemed to be a good turnout there. Good discussions. Again, I think AI was a little less prevalent, but still out there rearing its ugly head.
Of course it is. Of course it is. All right, so it's security money. Now, it's a little early. I'm out the week of the 26th, so we decided to do it this week. Normally, I'd wait a couple more weeks, get a few more findings in, but so we're going to do it today. And there's some interesting stuff in the segment we'll get into because everybody saw the market craziness last week, right? The drops, everything else. But what stood out to me in this was the impact of the CrowdStrike price drop in the index. Like that just stood out like front and center. When you look at the graphs when I posted them in the segment, you can see that the index took a much bigger hit, and it's because of CrowdStrike. And here's why. Remember, I did a weighted index fund. the weight for CrowdStrike is pretty high in the index because they've had such tremendous growth that when they drop, they just crater
They
the
tank
index.
everybody else.
Ah, it's brutal. And Thoma Bravo decided to buy Darktrace, which means I will now have to attempt to
Mhm.
find another company put in the index. So unless somebody's going public anytime
Right.
soon, somebody please, 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 I might be in a little bit of trouble for our next
I
segment.
know. And that was what, 5 billion? Isn't that what it came out to? Something like that?
Yeah, I think 5.3 billion.
Woo.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah, crazy.
Pretty crazy.
So, yeah, couple highlights. All right, so where did we close? Let's see. On Friday, the index closed at 1966.76, a 96.68% increase from when I started it. It's down from last quarter. Um, Again, a lot of it was market volatility, but CrowdStrike definitely had a big impact
Yeah.
on that because the NASDAQ closed at 16,745.30. That's an increase of 152.37%, which is up from last quarter. So you can see the
Yep.
divergence in the graph, and it literally is all CrowdStrike.
They disrupted a lot, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to cover some articles, one article on
Uh,
it next week. I mean, look, everybody's diagnosed the CrowdStrike thing, I'm pretty sure, to death. But there was an interesting article we'll cover in the next
Yep.
segment on how to prepare for CrowdStrike. So it was a pretty good leadership article we'll pull. So it is what it is. Um, let's see. Let's get into some of the other results. So revenue beat by 1.63% on average, which is up from last quarter. I think last quarter was under 1%.
Yeah.
Um,
Which you consider
and
flat at that point, right?
yeah, it's pretty flat. I mean, even the revenue beat at 1.63% is
It's still
is
flat.
pretty flat.
Yeah.
Like revenues have been in line. The big change was profit beat was 91.14% on average, which is way
Mhm.
up from last quarter. So revenue projections are in line, but what you're seeing is profitability beats starting to come in. So the pressure, right, of EBITDA,
Yep.
we've talked about this on the show before, is starting to show itself a little bit in these earnings beats. The profits are starting to come in for some of these companies.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's them keeping more cash on hand as well, right? I mean, you're starting to see that a lot. They're not spending. They're not investing in many instances. That's what we're seeing out there with a lot of our clients is try to keep as much cash on hand as they possibly can. Take those profits, stash them away.
Yeah, there's been a lot of belt tightening, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a couple of years of that, so I think the efficiency is starting to take hold.
It is. And we've covered the layoffs on this. There weren't a ton, by the way, because I go through Adrian's notes on Enterprise Security Weekly, and he had a whole segment on layoffs. We've seen those slow down, right? So we saw a lot of belt tightening, Ben, to your point. Now you're starting to see the profits kick in, and the market from a job hire perspective still soft, as we
Yeah.
talked about in some of our CISO job hiring last week.
Yeah. Not
Yeah,
filling
would
the
agree.
roles.
Yeah. So who performed well? Best performing, Varonis, Zscaler, OneSpan, and CyberArk. Both of those were on in last quarter. So OneSpan
Right,
and
right.
CyberArk have both been doing pretty well.
Varonis was that was a surprise that it hit again. Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, it surprised the hell
it's
out of
been
me.
a it's been a little while.
Right?
Yeah, they've been on the worst performing list a few
Quite a
times,
few times.
quite a few times. On worst performing, I was a little surprised by
Sentinel
SentinelOne.
One, me too. Yeah, I was surprised by
Yeah,
Sentinel One. I
yeah, it was a
yeah.
pretty big miss
I
on
mean,
on the
we
earnings
we may
side.
want to take a look at next time we do this to see what happens with Sentinel One because some of the fallout from CrowdStrike may be in their favor.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm curious, Jason, right? Because you're in the trenches a
Hmm.
little more with this. Are you starting to see that potential
Oh,
shift? Is people
absolutely.
looking
We
at alternatives to CrowdStrike?
absolutely. We have CrowdStrike customers that were die-hard CrowdStrike customers coming in and saying, "All right, I want to start evaluating alternatives."
And I think that actually started happening before, right? So both Sentinel-1 and CrowdStrike. So I think there's some pressure on other companies when you look at a Microsoft solution where it's bundled. So people have been looking at that E5 solution, and for the last, I would say 6 to 9 months, I've heard people talk and say, look, we're not just going to sign
Mhm.
and go forward with another extension. We want to look and see what the options are and what the value prop is,
Yeah.
and is it enough of a delta in a CrowdStrike or SentinelOne to justify that, or does Microsoft do enough? So I think
Yeah.
that that's something that's definitely been putting pressure, and this CrowdStrike issue didn't help. Well, I'm
See a
happy to
lot of a
talk.
lot
Go
it,
ahead, Jason.
and I agree about the consolidation, right? Defender for endpoint is
Mhm.
great. But what I'm seeing is folks wanting to have that defense in depth at the endpoint, because endpoint is so important, because you can run a Sentinel One along in tandem with Defender for Endpoint and it works really well. Or they'll catch each other. In CrowdStrike, I think you can do the same exact thing where you can run them in tandem. So I'm seeing a lot of that defense in depth at the endpoint side of the aisle. But this is the first time that I've seen die-hard CrowdStrike customers say, wait a minute, I want to chat. What are my options? And actually opening up the conversation, because the CrowdStrike side, I've seen a lot. Nope, I'm a CrowdStrike EDR customer and I will always be. I've seen that stance a lot.
Yeah.
Now it's opening up for conversation.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the fear by some in the market. I remember the last time this happened. I don't know how many remember 1996. We had some really interesting viruses and worms. And I can't remember which one it was. I have to go back into my memory banks, but one of the AVs did not catch it,
Mm.
and it took down some of the financial institutions. This was one of my first projects in cyber, was to swap out that antivirus for another one,
Yeah.
right? There was such a backlash against
Mhm.
what was happening there that you saw a ton of customers migrate off of one solution to another. I could see a very similar thing playing out
Agreed.
here with CrowdStrike, and that could be very damaging to the stock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and go ahead.
I was going to say perception is reality, right? Because we're gonna talk in an article about, are you making changes for like pressures, right? You're gonna have
Mhm.
board of directors coming down on a CIO or a CISO saying, "Hey, this CrowdStrike thing, it dropped us down for 10 days, 5 days, whatever the case may be. Do we should we really stay with a CrowdStrike?" And then you're gonna get
So,
pressure from the executive suite, right?
but that's a nuanced conversation, right? So, like, I think this is
Mhm.
one of the challenges when you
It
look
is.
at the CrowdStrike situation. Certainly, CrowdStrike should and has. I think they've taken blame for it. Right? I think they've stood up to it really well. I saw they got what was it at the at DEF CON? They got an award for like the biggest fail, right? And they stood up
Right.
and took it. But there's responsibility that companies have for their own part that they played in their own issue with CrowdStrike, right? It is not a best practice to go out and deploy, the most recent update to your entire infrastructure and just cross your fingers and hope it works. Best practice is destroy that, deploy that most recent update to a test group, see how it runs, bake it for a couple days, and then if that works, push it out further. I know instances of companies where they had an N-1 deployment for the global population and an N deployment for a test group, and they didn't get taken down by the CrowdStrike issue, right? And they were CrowdStrike customers. So there's onus that it lies everywhere, and I think that will be the problem. Is people will come down and say, "Hey, CrowdStrike brought us down." It's like, well, let's talk about how it actually happened, and people are
And,
going to
and
have it to
it's
say,
all about
"Oh,
the
it's
nuance,
CrowdStrike's fault. It's
right?
not my fault," right? I didn't
Again,
own any of the responsibility.
it's all about the nuance as well, right? Because here's
Yeah.
the thing: CrowdStrike will tell you, turn on automatic updates.
Yep.
Well, but
CrowdStrike will
that's the
tell
challenge
you,
in endpoint, right?
turn
So
on
so
turn on
there's a
automatic
Yeah.
updates.
balance.
And this was a channel file. I mean, this was
Yeah.
literally a channel file, right? I mean, this was something that should have been so innocuous,
Yeah, it should have.
but because of quality assurance, and we'll get into it later, because I mean, I've read the entire report that they put out there for root cause analysis.
Yep.
There's a lot of QA and process issue that happened here. A lot.
Sure, I'm
Yeah.
just saying there's enough blame to go around for everybody in this. And look, yeah, you're trying what's the alternative? Like you are vulnerable to a hack for somebody because you're not taking the most recent update from an endpoint protection provider,
Mhm.
right? But I do see, Jason, your point about bringing in kind of this layered defense. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, all transparency here, like working with Halcyon, like that's something we're seeing, and that's something that's definitely out there in the market. And people are saying to us, look, one of the first things ransomware does, and we're seeing ransomware get by endpoint protection and EDR, is they try to turn those things off, right? So that's one of the things Halcyon tries to do is up armor them. But like, this is the conversation of the nuanced layered defense, and you can't put all your eggs in one basket. It doesn't work anymore.
Yep, agreed.
So, so this is why IPS failed as a
Yeah.
technology. Automated patching is pretty much failed as a technology. But this is the point, right? I mean, yes, of course you turn on automatic updates and get the latest signatures. Why wouldn't you to protect your environment? This is why, right? This is the potential
McAfee had an
downside.
issue with this way back in the day, right? Like, this isn't a new thing. Like, this does happen.
Right. It does. Yeah. I mean, how do you prepare for it? So it will be interesting next quarter to see how that impacts the SentinelOne stock because it didn't perform very well in the last quarter results. It could completely change the SentinelOne stock going forward.
You're good.
It'd be
Agreed.
interesting. Yeah. Also on that worst performing list, Verint, Rubrik, which just came out.
Yep.
I wasn't
Yeah,
surprised.
Rubrik went through a run for a while, though. They had a run. So
They did, but those first earning reports sometimes always don't look as rosy when you right after your IPO, right? This
Yep,
was their
yep.
first
Yeah, you got to get some
earnings
track
after
record and run
IPO.
rate under you. Yeah.
Exactly. And then CrowdStrike, not surprised. Okay, a couple other things here. Average analyst rating was 1.701, moderate buy, better than last quarter. So there's still interest in this market. There are a few stocks that have some sells against them. Most of them are kind of in the buy hold area, which is why everything's kind of a moderate buy. Best rated Gen Digital, which is the old Norton, Rubrik, and A10 Networks. There is a lot of hype around Rubrik.
Yeah.
Just from an analyst perspective. Yeah, I was like, whoa. For a stock that just came out via IPO in our last quarterly update to have this high of an analyst rating, it was a little shocking, actually. And then worst rated Secureworks again, Fastly again, and NetScout.
Just gonna leave Secureworks there.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
everyone's leaving them there.
Right.
So the funny part is I do a copy file and that one never, that first line never changes. Oh gosh. All right. Acquisitions. All right. So Thoma Bravo buys Darktrace for 5.3 billion, which is going to screw up the index for next quarter. But Thoma Bravo's not done buying.
No.
And so it's interesting to see them, still acquiring companies in the space. Actually, Adrian had a really good post in ESW, and I don't remember the episode, but it lists out all their acquisitions and even some of the exits and kind of their positions. It's really it's mind blowing to see how much they've acquired.
I haven't seen the list, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, it still amazes me on some of the company like Tomo, right, where they do these acquisitions where they're not putting more together, right, and creating a larger
know.
value for the exit. Like that to me would make the most sense in the security space, but I'm not seeing any of it.
Yeah, I know. Kind of weird. Let's see. Palo Alto buys the security assets from IBM. So this is a really interesting one,
Yeah.
right?
That
So
was
they
limited to
basically
QRadar,
buy.
though, right?
It was.
Yeah.
It's primarily the QRadar portfolio,
Right.
right? Looks like IBM's exiting the QRadar
Mhm.
side, sells that off to Palo Alto. Palo Alto customers going to become
Cortex. Yeah, they're gonna
Cortex
bring that right
customers.
into Cortex.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were
agreed.
really. It seemed like they were really buying customers. Is what they were buying. The business. They're buying the business.
Well, and again, IBM has had other security products in the portfolio. What does that mean for other security assets long term from IBM? I don't know. But it was just an interesting because we're partnered with IBM. It was just an interesting announcement. I was like, oh, it's QRadar.
Yeah, and Palo wants in the SIM space. They want that lead spot. They're shooting for that lead spot.
Yep. There's divestiture. So Synopsys is going to spin out the application security business. So Synopsys, publicly traded companies, had this very large application security portfolio, but it's not their core business. They're all into like semiconductor chips and stuff, right? So Synopsys wants to spin out the AppSec side of the house. I don't know if it's actually been spun out yet. I couldn't find confirmation that it had been spun out, but they are trying to spin it out.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Own separate company. And there are some Tenable rumors out there that it might be up for sale.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Seen those, but that's been out for, I think, for a while, right? Like it's kind of that
Yeah, it came out
space.
a couple months ago. Yeah, it was kind of floating out there for a while. Nothing's happened of it, but again, you got somebody like a Thoma Bravo buying up publicly traded companies. Who knows? Could be, maybe Thoma or somebody else is interested in pulling them out of the public market. Yeah, we'll see. All right, so that's a pretty good wrap up of the public markets. So let's go in the private markets. Where do we start with Wiz?
Oh,
All right,
Yeah.
so
thank you, but no thank you, Alphabet / Google.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's where we
no,
start.
no, it starts
Stalking
before
horse.
that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Wiz raises $1 billion. Okay, they raise $1 billion in, I think, through a debt instrument or something. So they raise a ton of cash, and then they go out and they look to buy Laceworks, and that deal falls through. Then Google attempts to buy them for $23 billion, and they're like,
billion.
yeah, and they're like,
Thanks, but no
thanks.
Yeah. Were you surprised that they turned it down?
Dude, that's a huge valuation.
I know,
23 billion
crazy,
is
right?
a lot.
It's a huge valuation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, done a few exits, Ben. Like, that's a really hard valuation.
Yeah,
to
I don't know how
turn
you
man.
stare down that gun and like go, yeah, I think I'm gonna hopefully get a bigger number at some point, right? Like, okay, so they IPO is their only exit now, really, right?
Yes. See, that's the thing. Now you cut off certain exit channels, right? Because that was like a 230x deal. Like, it's massive.
Mhm.
Okay, massive. The only route to exit now has to be IPO.
And
Has to be. There's
look,
I don't know how else you get anywhere near that number.
So a couple things out of it. Like one, I think you have to look at, certainly Microsoft and the other major players have to be thinking, okay, Google definitely wants to make a play in this space. So like, what do they do as a response to that? But also like, I just thought about it from a, like you said, to get that type of exit out going IPO, that's a big risk. And the question in my mind is like I've talked to people earlier, founders of companies, people who have exited, like you said, you've had exits before, right? Like I've talked to people that said that they exited later stage or way late, and they got either less money than they would have had they exited early, or the effort and time that they put in to get to that place to get the same money that they could have gotten, years earlier. Like it doesn't make sense, right? And so I just looked at that and thought, yeah, that's a pair of brass ones to be able to just look that number 23 billion and say, yeah, I'm good.
What do
I'll
they
roll the
know that we
dice.
don't know?
Yeah.
Right. There, just so everybody understands the magnitude, there are only 4 companies in the index that have a 23 billion or higher market cap. There's only 4. Can anybody name them?
Go.
Palo.
I'm cheating because I'm looking
Yeah,
at my
I know.
spreadsheet.
Go. You have the notes.
Palo,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Checkpoint,
Uh-huh. Zscaler.
Checkpoint's in there. Wow. All right.
Cloudflare,
Yep.
CrowdStrike. Not
Oh,
even
wow.
Zscaler.
Not even
Zscaler
Zscaler.
is
Okay,
just
wow.
under
Okay.
it. Zscaler is sitting at 21 billion market cap. So they're just under that. Okay. That's what you're aspiring to is Wiz is a 23 billion plus. There's only 4 out of 25 companies in the index that currently have that market cap. The tall order.
Yeah.
Just saying.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, especially given where the market is right now. That's I mean, I guess they've got turnaround for the market on the horizon.
Maybe. Island took another 175 million.
Yeah. $3 billion valuation. Woo.
Keep pumping money into that thing. And so again, I'm sitting here thinking, right? So you got God. So Island's trying to build a secure browser that Google already has.
Yeah,
like I'm
totally.
just God. Yeah. Pumping another 175 million into that baby. Woo!
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I
you
feel
have
like that space is
Cohesive,
slowing
who's
down
got
for sure.
IBM and Nvidia backing them now. I mean, that's part of that 150 million that they got. It's IBM and Nvidia.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see some other big ones. Cohesity, 150 million. Corelight, 150 million. Huntress, 150 million. Some Pyrrhus, 125 million. Some big rounds
Yeah,
this
yeah.
last quarter.
I
So
always
the
like to
money's
see
still
who's
out there.
investing, right? Cohesity has IBM and Nvidia. Corelight
Yep.
has Cisco and CrowdStrike, right? So you start looking at where I've always been a person follow the money, right? See who's actually making these investments, and you have some big players starting to invest in these companies.
Yeah. Which kind of might give you a clue into what they're thinking
Hmm.
about strategically,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Because Corelight playing kind of
Yeah,
more
the
of
network
a
detection and
data log
response. Yep.
collection, yeah, yep, space and kind of, yeah, you never
Yeah,
know.
and then
Yeah.
you have the multi-cloud resilience with Cohesity, right? So you have IBM and Nvidia playing in that space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spy Cloud raised 35 million. I know the Spy Cloud team pretty well. We did a lot of work with them when I was at Living Security. They raised another 35 million. Um, interesting company. They're going to try to do more to prevent some of these compromised credential attacks. They collect a lot of dark web data. It'll be interesting to see what they put this money to, but I know they've been hiring in Austin like crazy down there. Any other ones stick out to you guys on this list? Because
Those are the
there's a
big
lot.
ones.
Like yeah,
Yeah, we hit all the big ones.
got it. So some acquisitions. So Venafi gets acquired by Cyberark for 1.54
Yep.
billion. That's a pretty good
Yeah.
exit.
Right. Now Venafi is
Just
what
saying.
they do crypto key management, right?
Yep. Yep. No name security on the I think they were API security by Akamai for 500
Yep.
million.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a really good fit actually.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but not a great exit
When I
for no
think
name.
about that one, it's yeah, probably not. They raised a lot of money, didn't they, Ben?
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't. It was not beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Uh, Gem Security by Wiz for 350 million, right? So they raised $1 billion. They bought Gem, tried to buy Lacework, falls down. Yeah. Anyways, Wiz was very active this last quarter. Entitled by Beyond Trust was 150 million, and Silk Security by Armis was 150 million. So those are the ones that had dollar values tied to them.
Yep.
I mean, outside the valuation for no name, some of those other exits aren't
Oh,
horrible.
I'm skipping the line a little bit. Fortinet grabbed lace work, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So the deal falls through with Wiz, then Fortinet went and picked them. I thought you'd know this. You're like a Fortinet
Yeah,
guy,
yeah.
aren't you?
I just haven't been paying attention to their acquisitions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. Lacework needed an exit, guys. I can just tell you that from just knowing what was
Yeah,
going
that just
on.
that
They
happened
needed
30
an
that
exit.
happened 30 days ago. All right, cool.
Yeah. Hubble by NetSpy. Hubble is that's HD Moore's company, isn't it? I think that was HD's company, which is interesting.
I'm not
Anyways.
trouble.
Um Yeah, I think it was HD Moore's latest startup. I think it was who Hubble was. Because I contacted them because they were doing some really interesting data collection stuff that I was trying to license. I'm pretty sure that was HD Moore's company. And so, all right, so here we go. Logarithm and Exabeam merge. Now think about
Yep.
that. Logarithm pulled up by Thoma Bravo. See, now we're starting to see some combinations of Thoma Bravo exits
Mhm.
coming together. So Logarithm, Exabeam come together. And I remember reading the article on this one. The analysts weren't that thrilled. You take a SIM with a UEBA, but Exabeam kind of started as a SIM, shifted into UEBA. But all the SIM and UEBA vendors are coming together anyways, aren't they? So why not like this combination?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but so when I meant more of like bringing tangential stuff more together versus just collapsing, right? Like,
Mm.
of course we're going to see that, but yeah, I'm looking for more innovation.
Yeah, I mean
Well,
some of the scuttlebutt you're seeing out there is this, comments are like two failing companies merging together to try to stay afloat now under private equity.
but sometimes they have
Yeah,
to.
yeah, right.
Like, so if you think about this, right? Some of these guys don't have a lot of options in the market. What's Exabeam going to do? Go public?
Right.
Maybe. Are they ready? Do they have a portfolio that would give? So what else do you do with them? You roll them together, try to get them bigger. The challenge I've seen, just in general, with a private equity buyout, is the first thing they go after is cost cutting,
Yeah.
which also cuts R&D and innovation and a bunch of other stuff, Ben, right? So you may not see much innovation. They're trying to get the portfolio right size to get the numbers to look better. But what's actually happening to the core technology, the customer base, and the innovation roadmaps? That's what concerns me with these PE exits is the first thing they go after, they just start
Slashing.
slashing costs. And what's the prospect of that being rolled together or rolled back out into the public market? I don't know. I haven't seen enough success there yet to say there's a tried and true way to do this. I think we're still in a wait and see pattern with some of these.
Yeah, would agree.
SailPoint, ForgeRock, Ping, like the identity market's hot. Where are all these guys? They're there, but they're not. And maybe it's because the market's just still sideways, right? And it's not an attractive time to spin some of these guys back out and put them back in the public market. But, who knows when we'll get there? Let's hope 2025.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. We need some budgets to open back up.
Seriously, big time.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Good to go on my side.
Same here.
Awesome. With that, we're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.